She had planned for everything. Every guard rotation, every corridor, every face in that palace she had studied before she arrived. She had planned for discovery, she had planned for interrogation, she had even planned for death, carried it in her mind like a small stone she had made peace with long ago. She had not planned for him. The throne room of Kismabad is built entirely from coral stone, white as bone, cool as ocean water, the kind of room that takes sound and makes it holy. Layla kneels in the center of it, with her wrists in chains. Her male disguise is gone, the robes, the bound chest, the careful posture she had practiced for months, all of it gone. The court surrounds her in half a circle of silk and judgment, advisors, guards, men who have known her for 3 months as someone else entirely. The senior advisor speaks, his voice carrying the particular satisfaction of a man who has been suspicious from the beginning and has finally been proven right. He speaks sharp and certain. A spy, a woman, an infiltrator who had been working inside these halls under a false name for 3 months. The law is clear, Your Majesty. There is only one judgment for this. The court murmurs its agreement. Layla does not look at the advisor. She looks at the Sultan. Kasim sits on the throne the way he does everything, with a stillness that makes the room around him feel loud by comparison. He has not spoken since she was brought in. He has simply looked at her. And she cannot read his face. For 3 months, she has been reading this man, learning his habits, his silences, the precise way his jaw tightens when an advisor says something he disagrees with but will not yet challenge. She has become, without meaning to, an expert in Kasim. And right now, she cannot read him at all. He raises one hand. The court goes silent immediately. The silence of people who have learned that when this Sultan signals quiet, what follows is worth hearing. He says, his voice carrying to every corner of that coral room. Leave us. The advisor starts to object. One look from Kasim closes his mouth. The court empties. The guards hesitate, then obey. And now there are only 2 people in a room built from the bones of the ocean, the Sultan and the woman who came to destroy him. He descends from the throne slowly, stops in front of her, crouches to her eye level, the way you crouch in front of something you want to understand rather than something you want to punish. And he says, his voice carrying something she has no name for. Tell me your real name. And tell me why you have been crying every night in the room next to mine for 3 months. She stares at him. He continues, quiet as the tide. I have known since the 3rd day. I was waiting for you to trust me enough to tell me yourself. To understand why a sultan will protect the woman sent to destroy him, we must go back to the night the ocean turned red, to the night a 12-year-old girl hid under a market stall and watched her entire world become smoke and memory, to the night Layla stopped having a home and started having a purpose. We must go back 12 years. There is a kind of beauty that only exists in places the world has not yet decided to want. The money is that kind of beautiful. A coral island sitting like a jewel on the Indian Ocean trade routes. Small enough that everyone knows everyone, rich enough that no one goes hungry, old enough that the walls of its buildings have absorbed 300 years of salt wind and story. The market runs from dawn to noon and smells of cardamom and dried fish and the particular sweetness of ripe mango left too long in the sun. Merchants from Arabia come for the spices, traders from Persia come for the coral, Ships from as far as the Chinese coast stop at the mine because its people know how to negotiate and its harbor is the safest on the route. In the center of all of this lives a family. Her father Jabir is not the island's chief or its king. He is something more valuable than either. He is the man every merchant trusts, the man who brokers deals between people who speak different languages and want the same things. His word is a contract that needs no paper. Her mother Amina weaves kanga. Not the way other women weave kanga, the way a poet writes. Each piece is different. Each border carries a different Swahili proverb, chosen specifically for the person who will wear it. Merchants come from Persia and Arabia not just for the fabric, but for the proverb, as though Amina can see something in a person and find the exact words their life has been waiting for. And in the middle of all of this is Layla, 12 years old, barefoot most of the time, following her father to negotiations and sitting very still, pretending she's not memorizing everything. Her father knows she is memorizing everything. He lets her. She has her mother's eyes and her father's mind, and absolutely nobody's patience. It is a Tuesday when the ships come. Layla remembers it as a Tuesday because her mother had promised to teach her a new weaving pattern that afternoon. She remembers being impatient. She remembers wishing the morning market would end faster than it was ending. She remembers the exact quality of the light when the first ship appeared on the horizon. They come at dawn, not one ship, not two, a fleet, flying the flag of Kismabad Sultanate, gold crescent on deep green, and moving with the particular confidence of ships that have never been told that certain things do not belong to them. Her father goes to meet them at the harbor because this is what Jabir does. He meets people, he talks, he finds the place where the agreement lives, even in difficult conversations. He believes, right until the moment he shouldn't, that this is a difficult conversation rather than something else entirely. Sultan Malik of Kismabad does not negotiate. He presents terms, and when the terms are refused, because Jabir is not a man who signs away what belongs to his people, the terms become something else. Layla hides under the market stalls the way her father told her to if anything ever felt wrong. She is small enough to fit. She is still enough to disappear. She watches through the gaps in the wooden slats. She watches her father refuse to sign. She watches what happens to men who refuse Sultan Malik. She watches her mother run towards the harbor when she hears the sound. She watches her mother stop at the water's edge. She watches her mother look back once, just once, towards the market stall where she knows her daughter is hiding. And then she watches her mother choose the ocean over what is coming. The water takes her gently, the way the ocean takes everything it loves. Layla does not scream. She learned later that this was shock, that her body simply could not process what her eyes were giving it. She lays under those market stalls through the rest of the morning and into the afternoon, while the money burned around her. An old fisherman found her at dusk. He did not ask questions. He had no answers himself. Only a small boat and the knowledge that whatever was left of this island was not safe for a child. He rowed her to the mainland in darkness without speaking. Layla arrived on the Swahili coast with the clothes on her back and her mother's last kanga wrapped around her shoulders. Ocean blue and gold. A proverb in the border in Amina's handwriting. Haraka haraka haina baraka. Hari hari has no blessing. She was 12 years old, she had nothing, and she had one thing that would outlast everything else she would ever feel. A clarity so complete it was almost like peace. She would not be weak. Not ever, not again. Not until the Kismabad Sultanate understood what it had taken from the ocean. Grief, when it has nowhere to go, becomes something else. In some people, it becomes despair. In others, distance. In Layla, it became architecture. She did not become a warrior first. She was too clever for that. She became a student. She found work in the household of an old Swahili scholar, a man named Idris, who collected knowledge the way other men collected gold. Maps, trade records, letters in 7 languages, books that had traveled farther than most people ever would. She cleaned his house, she organized his papers, she served his tea, and she read everything she was not supposed to read. Idris noticed approximately 3 months in when she corrected a translation error in a Persian trade document he had been misreading for 6 years. He looked at her over his spectacles for a long moment, and then he moved her from the kitchen to the study. By 18, she spoke Arabic and Persian alongside Swahili. She understood maritime trade law well enough to argue cases the scholars argued over. She knew the spice routes the way her father had known them, in her body like memory. By 20, she began the other education, the one she conducted in secret at the edge of the scholar's property, in the hour before dawn. A retired Omani soldier named Hassan owed Idris a debt he had never repaid. Layla found the record of it in Idris' correspondence files. She went to Hassan with the record and a simple proposition. She speaks, her voice flat and certain in the memory. Teach me everything you know, and the debt disappears. Hassan looked at this young woman for a very long time. Then he said quietly, "This is going to take years." She replied simply, "I know." It took 4 years. By 24, she was fluent in 4 languages, skilled with a blade, and had memorized every known fact about the Kasimabad Sultanate, its trade routes, its political alliances, the names of its senior advisors, the layout of its palace. From 3 separate accounts she had cross-referenced until she could walk its corridors in her sleep. And then the news came. Sultan Malik was dead. The world expected Layla to feel relief. She felt cheated. 12 years of becoming a weapon, and the target had simply stopped existing. But there was a son, Kasim, 28 years old, new to the throne, and the court gossip that filtered through the scholars' network was strange. He had freed certain trade prisoners his fathers had held. He had returned certain seized contracts. He had dismissed 3 of his father's most aggressive military advisors in his first month on the throne. Layla listened to all of this with the particular attention of someone who has learned that powerful men perform goodness the way merchants perform generosity, only when it costs them nothing. She would go and see for herself from the inside. The disguise took 3 months to build, not the physical part. That was the simplest element. Binding, robe skirt for a young man's frame, a name chosen carefully, Life, meaning lion in Arabic, chosen with a particular dark humor of a woman who found it fitting to enter the enemy's court wearing the name of something that hunts. She practiced the way she practiced everything for 12 years, obsessively, completely. The way a young man sits, taking up space without apology. The way a young man walks, forward-weighted and hurried. The way a young man speaks in rooms where he wants to be taken seriously, slower than you think, lower than feels natural, with the unconscious assumption that what he's saying will be heard. She had spent 24 years learning to make herself smaller in rooms. Learning to make herself larger took 6 weeks. Kismabad is nothing like Thamani. Where Thamani was intimate and Sultan and human, Kismabad is enormous and deliberate. Coral stone buildings that reach toward the sky, as though making a point. A harbor busy enough that 3 ships can arrive without anyone particularly noticing. Layla, or Life, arrives on a trade vessel as a young scholar seeking position in the Sultan's advisory court. Her references are real. Idris had written them himself without knowing what they were for. Her knowledge of maritime trade is genuine and demonstrable. Her Arabic is flawless. She gets the position in 4 days. On the third day, she sees the Sultan for the first time. She has studied his face from descriptions. She has constructed him in her imagination from the court records and merchant gossip and the stories of people who have met him briefly in formal settings. She is prepared. She is not prepared. Kasim is younger than she expected, not in years, but in the way he carries himself. There is none of his father's consuming loudness, none of the performance of power she has been bracing herself for. He moves through the court the way water moves, finding the level of every room without disturbing it. He is listening. In the meeting she attends on her third day, really listening. Not the performed attention of a man waiting for his turn to speak, but the genuine absorption of someone for whom other people's information is actually interesting. He asks her a question in the middle of the meeting, direct, unexpected, addressing her over the heads of 3 senior advisors who have been here for decades. He says, calm and curious. Life. You worked with Idris of the Coast Trade Network. What was the money's primary export in the decade before its dissolution? The room goes very slightly still. The money. He said the money in the same tone he would say any other trading post, casually, as a fact of geography. Layla feels 12 years of carefully constructed control compressed into a single breath. She breathes out slowly. She answers, her voice completely level. Coral and spiced kanga fabric, Your Majesty, with secondary trade in cardamom and dried fish. The island control a significant portion of the Middle Road spice negotiation before she stops. Continues, before its trade network was absorbed. Kasim looks at her for just a moment longer than the question requires. Then he nods and moves on. Layla breathes and notices for the first time that her hands are not completely steady. It is 3 weeks into her time in the palace when she finds him on the seawall. Late, the harbor quiet below and the towboats dark shapes against dark water. The stars doing what stars do on the Swahili Coast, arriving in such numbers that the sky seems almost too full of itself. Kasim sits with his feet hanging over the edge, no robes of state, simple dark linen, a mango in one hand that he is eating with the particular and self-consciousness of a man who is completely alone, or believes he is. He hears her approach and does not turn. He says completely easy, life, sit. She considers leaving. She sits. Because what else can she do? They sit without speaking for long enough that the silence stops being awkward and becomes something else. The kind of silence that exists between people who are both thinking and who have temporarily stopped pretending they are not. He speaks fast. His voice is not directed at her exactly, more at the ocean below them, as though he is continuing a conversation he has been having with it for years. He says, quiet and certain, my father destroyed something that belonged to the sea, didn't he? I can always tell. The ocean remembers what men prefer to forget. Layla says nothing. Her jaw is very tight. Kasim continues, not looking at her. I have been trying to find records of every kingdom and trading post his fleet absorbed. To understand what was taken, some things I can return, some things I cannot. She is looking at the ocean, the same ocean that took her mother, the same ocean that carried her away from the money in a fisherman's boat in the dark. The same ocean that has been the only constant in 12 years of becoming someone capable of being here. She says nothing, but something inside her chest, something she built very carefully over a very long time, develops its first crack. She tells herself she'll not go back to the seawall. She goes back the next night, and the night after, and the night after that. He teaches her to navigate by the stars. She pretends she does not already know. She tells him about the old Damani spice routes carefully, removing anything that might tell him who she really is. He listens the way he listens to everything, completely, as though the information is not useful to him so much as interesting. One night he talks about his father, not defensively, not with the careful political distance she expects from a son protecting a legacy. Honestly, the way you talk about something you have already made peace with being complicated. He says low and considered. He believed the ocean belonged to whoever was strong enough to take it. He was not a cruel man exactly, he was a certain man. Certainty in someone with enough power becomes cruelty whether they intend it or not. I grew up watching people smile at him the way you smile at something you're afraid of. I decided very early that I did not want that particular kind of respect. Layla looks at him. She asks carefully and quiet, "And what do you do with what he took?" Kasim looks at the ocean a long time and he says, "Everything I can, every single day. It will never be enough, but I will not stop." She walks back to her room that night and sits very still for a very long time. She came to Kismabad to confirm what she already believed, that power corrupts completely, that sons inherit their father's sins, that the Sultanate deserved to fall. Instead, she is sitting on a seawall every night with a man who carries his father's guilt like a stone he has chosen not to put down, because putting it down will mean pretending it was never his to carry. She does not know what a weapon is supposed to do with a man like that. She does not know what Layla is supposed to do. The Layla who is not life. The Layla who still has her mother's kanga folded at the bottom of her traveling chest. The Layla who cries every night in the room next to his and does not know anymore exactly what she is crying for. She only knows that she came here for war and something is going wrong. It is on a Thursday evening, 3 months into her time in the palace, that everything begins to end. She comes back to her quarters from a late meeting to find the room slightly different. Not ransacked, not searched in any obvious way, just slightly different. The kind of different that only someone who has been careful their whole life will notice. She goes to her traveling chest, opens it, looks at the place where her mother's kanga has lived for 3 months. It's gone. She stands very still. She runs through every possibility with cold speed of someone whose mind has been trained for exactly this moment. A thief, a suspicious advisor, a guard who searched rooms routinely. But she already knows, in the same way she has known for 3 months without letting herself know, she already knows who has it. The knock on her door comes an hour later. A palace attendant, a simple message. The Sultan requests her presence in his private study. She walks those corridors for what she believes is the last time. She has her blade concealed because she is always her mother's daughter, always prepared. She does not know for what, not exactly, not anymore. His private study is smaller than she expected. Books everywhere, not arranged for performance, but actual read. Spines cracked, pages marked, maps on the walls with notes in the margin in his handwriting. He is standing at the window when she enters, looking at the harbor. He does not turn immediately. When he does, he's holding something. Ocean blue and gold. Her mother's kanga. He places it on the table between them, carefully, the way you place something that belongs to someone else. He looks at her and he says quiet and absolute, "I know what this pattern means. I know where it comes from. And I have known you are not live since the 3rd day." Her hand moves towards her blade. He notices. He does not move. He says, his voice carrying something she still has no name for, "I let you stay because I needed to understand what my father's choices looked like from the other side. You showed me every single day without knowing you were doing it. And because..." He stops. She waits. The harbor light moves across the coral walls. The ocean breathes below them. He says finally, "Because whoever you really are is the most honest person in this entire palace." Layla looks at him. This Sultan, this son, this man who has been sitting next to her on a seawall every night for 3 months, who knew, who always knew, who let her stay anyway. She does not reach for the blade. She does not speak. She simply stands there in his studies with her mother's kanga on the table between them. And for the first time in 12 years, she does not know what comes next. She came to kiss my bad for war. She brought a blade and a borrowed name and 12 years of becoming something that could not be broken. She did not bring anything for this.